I had a dream last night, and this dream was about zombies.
A doomsday mom in her own words.
And World War III about to start. Lights are going to go out. There's going to be no power. It's going to be dark, and there's going to probably be a lot of fire.
This is the Utah woman now in custody in Croatia after allegedly taking her 4 kids illegally out of the U.S. and vanishing for weeks, until we learned of a bombshell twist in this story this week. What her social media is telling us about her disturbing beliefs at the center of this case. We're On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Hey guys, real quick before we start this episode of On the Case, I want to talk about our partner and sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest personal injury law firm. They're a firm of more than 1,000 attorneys who have recovered $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. In the past few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when insurance offered just $350,000. In Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million. That's 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan makes it easy to fight for what you deserve. You can even start a claim from your phone. So if you're injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/OTC. You can click the link below or scan the QR code on your screen. The family of 3 of the 4 kids who Alicia Seymour took out of the country in November 2025 say all the kids are safe, but they are working to get them back to the United States, and there's some legal hurdles that they're trying to get over. That's proving to be difficult, according to a family member we spoke with who is in a small coastal Croatian town where Alicia Seymour allegedly brought those kids.
Heed his warning. Okay? We are in a war, Ephesians 6:12, against principalities, not against man. We're fighting evil creatures, evil beings. We're fighting darkness.
Now, this is one of the TikToks that Alicia posted last year where she lays out dreams that she had been having about the world coming to an end. These beliefs appear to be at the center of this case and a driving alleged motive for why she took the kids out of the country. Now, before we dive into the clues that we picked up through her posts online, I want to lay out for you the key parts of this story that has been going on for multiple months. Alicia Seymour, the mom we're talking about, is 35 years old. She lived in West Jordan, Utah, which is near Salt Lake City, and she's the mom of 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter, and she has 2 different ex-husbands. The eldest child is 11 years old and the youngest is just 3. This is according to a GoFundMe page that was started by one of the dads who is now in Croatia trying to get the kids back home. Police say that Alicia Seymour wanted to keep the kids to herself, and she went to extreme lengths to do it. Seymour was last seen in the United States on November 29th. This is roughly 2 months ago. She and the children boarded a one-way flight for Amsterdam, which ended in Croatia. Police say there was a voicemail that was left for one of the dads on December 2nd, where Seymour claimed to be in France with the children, stating that she was looking for a permanent residence and she needed to get the children out of the country because, quote, the end times were coming. Now, Seymour has joint custody of the kids, so that does create some legal hurdles and explains why she was able, even though she had some alleged very disturbing beliefs, she was able to have access to these kids legally. Now, police say on December 10th, the time for her to return the children to their dads had long since elapsed. This became a criminal investigation. Police in Utah have charged her with 4 counts of custodial interference. Police request when she's brought back to Utah, she'll be held without bond. Now, we learned this week that Seymour was taken into custody in Dubrovnik, Croatia. All the kids are alive and all the kids are safe. They're currently in the custody of Croatian authorities at what we would call an orphanage. The Croatian government is also now giving comment on the current situation. And yeah, there are legal hurdles that Seymour's ex-husband and his family are trying to get over to be able to get these kids back. And we'll explain a little bit more in a moment what the Croatian government has to say about that. Now, around the time that Seymour allegedly took the kids, people were concerned about her mental state and her beliefs.
This dream was about an EMP going off. I heard the sound, like the blast that it makes. And as soon as that happened...
On TikTok, Seymour went by the name A Daughter of Light And this was the last post that she made before she allegedly took the kids out of the country. She posted it in late October, roughly a month before her flight left for Europe. In the TikToks that we saw, Alicia often talks about different ways the world could come to an end that she saw in her dreams, whether it be World War III or a massive flood.
I have had this dream on my mind for the last few weeks at least.
It also appears that Alicia sharing her beliefs publicly on social media only started in the middle of last year, at least on this account. Her first post was from May, and we noticed at the beginning, her content said less about religion and the world coming to an end, and it was more about people who she thinks are narcissists.
Projection. If you ever want to know what a narcissist is doing, listen to what they are saying. They will accuse you of lying and cheating, and whatever else they have done, they will accuse you of doing it. Listen to what they are saying, they are doing it.
Now, it appears that she is talking about one of her ex-husbands.
I did not know what a flying monkey was until I married a narcissist. I was never given a chance to even tell my story. And that was the hard part, was I was never even given the chance to tell my story, because they had been working behind closed doors, essentially, and been already telling these lies, incepting these lies into what was going on, slightly twisting things, and making it as if I was a problem, and only telling 3/4 of the story, not the other quarter that would actually tell what was happening.
At one point, Alicia even posts about the case of Travis Decker, the Washington State father who killed his 3 young daughters last year at a campsite and then killed himself. Here's a message that Alicia sent to Decker's wife in June 2025.
Hey Whitney, our hearts go out to you. We are sorry for what has happened, and those poor girls didn't deserve that, and they can't ever be replaced.
Now, as 2025 goes on, Alicia's posts become more about religion and these dreams that she said she was having about the world coming to an end.
I have had this dream on my mind for the last few weeks at least, and I had this dream when I was a kid, and it's about World War III. Okay, so it is me. I'm in California. The sky is dark, and all the buildings are dark. So I thought that it was nighttime, but as I looked closer, there's no lights anywhere. There's no street lights. The only light that was around was from the fires. There was explosions. There was fire, people running around with torches, torching things. And there's screaming, and there's just chaos, okay? And I looked to the right of me, and it's this man. And this man is sitting there looking at me, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm running."
Alicia also makes posts about the end of the world with kids around. Listen.
Has anyone else had dreams of being in, pods, and connected to something, or being in tanks or anything like that, where you're hooked up to a big computer or a big machine, right? So I've had a dream like that, but it's me and thousands of other people are in these pods, and we have these tubes hooked up to us. Well, in my dream I wake up and I'm underwater, and I open up the lid and push myself out of this tank thing. I take out all these tubes that are on me, and I am standing up, and I feel like I'm in a cave somewhere, and there's just layers upon layers, and it's deep, and it's just tall, it is massive. And I look over, and there are thousands of these other tanks with people in them.
Alicia also starts centering her posts more around her faith.
I just want you guys to know that, with everything that is happening, be mindful of what it could mean, of the deeper representation. If you don't have a Bible, get a Bible. If you don't have a relationship with your Savior, get one, because you're not going to want to be here when the tribulations are happening.
So as we get later into 2025, Alicia starts talking about dreams, and dreams that get more and more aggressive, it appears. This one is about dreams she's had talking about zombies.
This person I'm talking to slowly starts to not be able to talk, okay? And then has that stench, and then has like that it was like something in their brain just flipped, okay? And they lunge, right? Because they're hungry. And now I'm like running, and I go into the other rooms, and in my dream, I want to say it was not even 5 minutes. And everybody else was already that thing, okay? They were opening doors. They were opening doors. They had like this unsatiable hunger, okay? And they ended up like when they couldn't find something, they would leave and go find something, and they would go back. It's like they would double check every place that they had been, okay?
So you can see why people were concerned with Alicia's mental well-being and why they were concerned about the kids, considering they were out of the country and for several weeks, no one knew where the kids were. Police say after Alicia left for Europe, they did a welfare check at her home in West Jordan. They say when they got there, the door was unlocked and the apartment was unoccupied. Then the arrest warrant that police filed in Salt Lake County say that police found her car at the Salt Lake City airport. And inside the car, they found a notebook that had a checklist that could be very damning to the case that she is going to face when she gets back to the United States. And that list allegedly said to shred documents, to discard phones, and to take passports. The FBI has been trying to find Seymour and the kids ever since they left the country. And the family of Seymour's ex-husband tells us that the FBI did in fact find Alicia and the kids in Croatia. And it was the local authorities in that southern coastal town of Croatia who took her into custody. The sister of Seymour's ex-husband, Jill, spoke to us from Croatia this week. She says she and her brother are there trying to get the kids back home. They don't know how long they're going to be in Croatia for. And they said that the reason that Alicia took the kids allegedly to Croatia was because there was an American woman who lived there with her son, who Alicia met on TikTok, and the two of them shared the same beliefs. That child that the woman has in Croatia is 13 years old, and he played a very big role, it seems, in tracking these kids down. Now, the family says that Alicia and her 4 kids allegedly lived with this woman for roughly a month and a half, and then this happened, according to Jill Seymour, the aunt of the kids. Listen.
The 13-year-old child is actually who found out that that the kids were missing and that the FBI was looking for them in the States. He was having a conversation with my 8-year-old nephew, Levi, and Levi asked him to Google his name because this 13-year-old had a cell phone. And so he Googled Levi's name, and all of the news articles popped up. And he sent those in a group text. He allegedly sent those in a group text, is what he's telling us, to his mom and to Alicia, with concern that the kids were looking for them. And as far as the 13-year-old is concerned, his mom was unaware that the children were not here legally, and that they were being looked for by the FBI. So she and Alicia went to the police station. This other woman pretty much dropped Alicia off at the police station and forced her to turn herself in. And an argument broke out, and both were arrested at that time.
Who is this other person?
She is from Georgia. She has lived here from Georgia, the state, in the United States, and she's lived here for about a year and a half with her 13-year-old child, on an island here in Croatia. She has all the same beliefs as far as end of world in the prophecies that Alicia was receiving. If you look at her TikToks and everything, it's all very similar.
So Jill shared with us these pictures of her brother, Alicia's ex-husband, with the kids who are now at a state-run orphanage in Croatia. 3 of the kids are his, and then there's a 4th child who is Alicia's child, but she had that child with another ex-husband. So certainly at this point, it is great news that these kids are alive, that the kids are okay, that we know where all of them are. But Jill told us that these legal hurdles are very challenging. They'll need to hire Croatian lawyers who specialize in child abduction to create and submit Hague Convention applications. They also need to hire court-approved translators. And they say they're going to have to be in Croatia for an extended amount of time as they work through these legal hurdles in this country in Europe. Now, Croatian authorities told People magazine, quote, particular attention is being paid to the prevention of any potential risk to the children and to the protection of their physical and psychological well-being, in line with the best interests of the children. In accordance with applicable legislation, the children have been placed in an appropriate social welfare care facility where all necessary forms of care protection and support are being provided and where their needs are being fully and adequately met. End quote. Now, again, it's unclear how long it will take to get these kids back home. It's also unclear just how long it will be until Alicia is brought back to Utah to face the 4 charges of custodial interference that she has been charged with in Salt Lake County, Utah. Joining us now to talk more about what could happen next in this case is David Tafuri, international law attorney and former State Department official. So a great person to have on to talk about what's happening here in Croatia and how it could factor into the charges that Alicia Seymour will face in Utah. First, let's talk about the children, because they're in this state-run orphanage, according to the family, in Croatia, and they just can't come home directly. There's some steps that have to be walked through. Why is that?
That is because of the laws in Croatia, and likely because the authorities in Croatia want to make sure that once they release the children, they've released them to the right person, and that it is legal in the United States for that person to take custody of the children and to bring them back to the United States. So they need to go through a number of steps to feel comfortable that they have the authority to release them and that the U.S. authorities have approved of that.
Because, it's easy for us, here watching this story to say, well, if the FBI calls, don't you just hand the kids over and then trust in that? But then I'm sure from the Croatian side of things, you have these kids and the details of this story are wild, to say the least. And they're trying to figure out what's going to happen. The family said they have to file or hire an attorney and then file a Hague Convention application. What is that?
So the Hague Convention allows for the service of legal documents from a court in one country to persons in another country. And it's a convention that countries can sign up for. In this case, I believe the United States is a signatory, and I believe Croatia is as well. So that is a mechanism for ensuring that legal documents from a court here will be recognized in Croatia.
When we talked with the family of Alicia Seymour's ex-husband, his sister, they're in Croatia right now visiting with the kids and going through the process of trying to get them back to the United States. And it sounds like they weren't really sure how long this process would take. From your experience, I mean, if you had to give an idea of the timeline it could take to get these kids back, what would be like a fair way to assume that?
Well, I'm pretty surprised that it's taking this long. It's been, 8 to 10 days already, and the welfare of the children needs to be paramount. And obviously, they're better off being with their legal guardians than in an orphanage, especially in an orphanage where they don't speak the language and the culture may be quite different. So what has to happen, though, is for Croatia to receive from a court in Utah or from Child Protective Services in Utah, and perhaps from both, a order to release the children to the legal guardian or legal guardians, because I think there are 2 fathers involved here, and enable them to bring the children back to the United States. So a court order that could also be facilitated by the State Department, because Croatia has been saying they want U.S. authorities involved. So perhaps the embassy in Croatia and particular embassy officials will be involved in ensuring this goes quickly. And again, the State Department has an obligation to protect the welfare of the children. So the State Department should be acting very quickly. And that's why I'm a bit surprised it's taken this long, but it is a complicated legal situation.
Yeah, because, I mean, she is going to face charges of custodial interference if and when Alicia Seymour returns to Utah. When you look at this case, and it's not a situation where she kidnapped the kids in the legal sense of the word, where she was just this stranger who grabs the kids, then they're on a flight, and then suddenly they're in Croatia. I mean, these are her kids. and she has joint custody of the kids. So legally they were, now the time has passed where she should have brought them back according to law enforcement. But how does that custody part of it, even for the international, from the Croatian side, how does that factor into any of this, that legally they are her kids?
Well, likely there's the custody agreement between the parents requires one parent to get consent of the other to travel with the kids internationally. That obviously did not happen. And oftentimes, by the way, airlines here in the United States will demand a letter from the other parent if both parents are not with the kids when they seek to get on an international flight. That gives consent, and that letter needs to be notarized, giving permission for the one parent to take the kids overseas. That also did not happen here.
That was something that I thought of, because I know, and this hasn't been brought up in terms of the legal documents, but I know the family says that they accuse her of forging passport documents. But then you see what it takes. I mean, anybody who's taken an international flight, I mean, sometimes it does feel like you need an act of Congress just to get on a plane, even if you're just going on vacation. Does anything stand out to you about how she was able to allegedly pull this off, to take these kids, though they were in her possession, and then she flies one way, which might have been a red flag as well to, people at the airport, and then eventually get to Croatia and be undetected for as long as she was?
Yeah. At a number of steps in the process, mistakes were made. So you mentioned she got passports for these children. So they didn't have passports before she decided to do this. Normally, you have to show up in person at a State Department passport office, in order to get passports for children. I think normally you're supposed to have both parents there. Perhaps you can have, written consent from the other parent. It sounds like she may have forged that written consent in order to get the State Department to issue these passports to the children. But the State Department, might have had an obligation at least to look at the records, see if there was any custody agreement in place. So there may have been mistakes made there in allowing her to get the passports in the first place, which made it possible for her to take the kids overseas. Although the next step also should have stopped her, which is she should have had a document from the other legal guardians saying that she had consent from them to take the kids overseas. The airline is supposed to check on that, and also perhaps CBP or TSA can check on that as well. Those things apparently did not happen.
Yeah, and too, like from going, I know the flight was a one-way that was supposed to go through Amsterdam, and then she eventually makes her way to Croatia, where at some point, where was a customs person, whether it's on the American side of things, or even I'm sure if you land in Croatia, which is a very popular tourist destination, that someone would have found it odd that she had a one-way ticket with these kids going to that country.
That's right.
When it comes to her legal situation now, what's going to be the process? The FBI said no comment, but they have said, through the family, that they have identified her. She's in custody. She's facing these charges in Utah. What happens next?
Well, she's facing charges in Utah. Utah will likely seek to extradite her to the United States. There will be an extradition process in Croatia. It could be different from the extradition process we have here, but likely a court will have to review the extradition request. She may have a chance to have counsel. She may have a chance to fight the extradition request, which would likely result in some set of hearings for a judge to decide. And then the judge would order her extradition. That may also require some permissions from the executive in Croatia as well for her to be extradited. And then if that happens and there is a viable extradition order that has been issued by a court in Croatia, then she would be sent back to the U.S. to be tried in Utah. There's also a possibility that she's committed crimes in Croatia related to taking these kids into Croatia without permission. And Croatia may also want to investigate and prosecute her. And if that happens, it could be possible that Croatia would prosecute her first, and then it would have to consider whether to extradite her to the United States to face the charges that she has there.
Because taking the children without permission in the United States into another country, that country could see that as a crime in their law.
Correct.
when it comes to who would represent her, because I think in the United States, if roles were reversed, like there could be a public defender. And I don't know what her financial situation would be, but to your understanding, I mean, what does she do legally if she's in Croatian custody? Like who's figuring out her legal situation and the process of getting back?
Well, she'd certainly need a lawyer and an interpreter because I don't think she speaks Croatian. And she would come up with a defense strategy. I don't know whether we don't know yet whether she would choose to fight extradition or whether she would agree to extradition and perhaps be extradited back to Utah, where she would try to fight the prosecution and defend herself against the prosecution in Utah. So she has some choices to make, and hopefully she has good counsel helping her make the right choice.
From the standpoint of the family of the children, and 3 of the 4 of them are Kendall Seymour's kids, and he is the one who is over there, who we've talked to, and he is in the process of trying to get him back, filing this Hague Convention application. They need translators, they need attorneys. It sounds very expensive. I guess how common is it that in a situation like this, a family is going to have to foot the bill? I know they're trying to raise money on GoFundMe, where it's not his fault that if everything that's been alleged is true, that his ex-wife took the kids, and then now in the process to get them back, it sounds very expensive to go through the legal process in Croatia to get them home.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the situation that they face. It's unlikely that the U.S. government has any programs to provide counsel and pay for counsel in Croatia, although they would likely recommend firms in Croatia that they believe would be good. And most U.S. embassies abroad have lists of lawyers that they recommend. So hopefully they're going to be able to raise enough money on the GoFundMe to afford counsel. But I do think the State Department and U.S. authorities could speed this up by pressing very hard for Croatia to make an expedited decision.
In your career and your work, whether it be the State Department and now as an international law attorney, I mean, how common are cases like this?
Well, I've never worked on a case like this, but it is somewhat common. And you see media reports about it where parents take without having the right to do so, take their kids overseas and violate custody agreements. So that's why all of these requirements are in place, because it has happened many times in the past. So it's somewhat common, but this one is particularly complicated because the kids were found by the Croatian authorities and then taken and put in an orphanage. And so in this case, it's kind of heartbreaking because the legal guardian, Kendall, is only able to visit once a day. So they're kind of stuck in an orphanage that might feel a bit like jail, even though it's not.
Yeah, and I know they get, I think, 2 hours a day, and they're kind of in this holding pattern, trying to figure out, at least the last time that we spoke with them, how to get the kids home. And then, of course, there's a whole other side of this of Alicia Seymour and the charges she could face, whether it be in Croatia or how the legal process will play out in Utah when eventually she gets back there. If she was to be tried, and I'm, forgive me for not knowing the laws and how sentences work in Croatia, but if she is found guilty of a crime in Croatia, is that a case where she could face prison time in Croatia, and then the legal process, does whatever happened in the United States and the charges she faces there take a back seat? Is that something like the State Department and FBI get involved in, where they might say, well, actually, this is a pretty big priority for us, we'd like to take her? Like, how does that process work out?
It depends on what crimes she has committed in Croatia, and that depends on their local laws. But I would expect that there is a possibility Croatia might be able to prosecute her. Now, whether they will choose to do so is a different question, because oftentimes a country will say, okay, this is a crime in our country too, but this is a national from another country, and the crimes there are more serious, and that country has a stronger interest in seeing that the person faces justice. And in that case, Croatia might decide, okay, we're not going to prosecute only because we know the U.S. is going to prosecute, and therefore look at cooperating with the U.S. on the extradition process so the person faces justice in the country where they are based, which is where the crimes are, I think, more acute.
All right, and we'll see what plays out. Just an incredible case. You feel for this family, and we'll see what happens next. David Tefuri, former State Department official as well as an international law attorney. Great person to talk. Help us walk through and understand a very complicated situation. Thanks for being with us on Law and Crime.
Thank you.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and now you can find episodes of On the Case on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.